Theresa May began 2017 in nice ratings and a continuous most, but gambled both of on a click general poll how backfired. How did view polls represent the rollercoaster year in UK policy? Review polls in 2017. He's useful to share the year in 3 sections, the time up Theresa May named the surprise party general poll, the campaigning time himself, and the months with later. The much longer at first and tertiary components of the year include bin times of just progressive motion. The poll campaigning saw fast and really big shifts. In the time up to April 18, while Mrs. May announced she requested an previous poll, the Conservative Party saw their survey ranking push above until Labour's slowly slid down. The gap among the parties may not include been the initial cause for her judgment, but she would certainly include detained flame if the polls had been nearer. In the instant ramifications of the ad, the Conservative Party went up though future, affecting 50% in one survey, the highest for any side with 2008. But later Labour's ratings begun to growth. At first the change was little, and differences among voting companies done it difficult to be specific which was departure on. For the stage, Labour's preliminary seemed to go generally at the charge of UKIP. As the campaigning went on, although, and particularly following the publishing of the manifestos, Labour's stance extended to reinforce until the Conservative Party bring down behind. As we now aware, largest of the definitive campaigning polls were yet ill underestimating Labour's force. But they did choose up the line of journey, and the change was greater rather than whatever we'd seen up. As I told recent overnight on Newsnight, the motion in the polls above the campaigning is greater rather than in any poll I've coded with 1945. With the poll, largest polls include had Labour in the conduct. But down there's been a sluggish decrease of their instant position election highs, and the largest latter polls include the 2 major parties substantially cervix and cervix. In Scotland and Wales down there are less polls to go on yet, relying on the accessible testimony, the patterns in both of our various of large Britain as a entire. Labour has seen enhancement anywhere, once again, in largest of the growth happening for the poll campaigning. But in Scotland the has substantially go at the charge of the SNP, and in Wales of UKIP. There could be testimony of ex-Labour voters who had switching to such parties back to the stack. The adoption ratings for Theresa May and Jeremy Corbyn above the year pursue a such design to vote intent, but the movements are more than overdone. Mrs. May begun the year in a favourable account that went up in the months up the poll was named. It later wobbled a bit in the at first few weeks of the campaigning up departure in a steep decrease. Jeremy Corbyn's ranking accompanied the inverse of the design. The other part of the year has seen the gap tight once again. Mrs. May's ratings include superior until Mr. Corbyn's include drifted. Yet, the common changing with the start of 2017 is really big. In spite Jeremy Corbyn possessing high adoption ratings rather than Theresa May, he does not travel expenses so while human beings are requested who they believe would do the top main secretary. The diagram follows a such form, but in Opinium's episode, shown over, the Labour lead has never been in front line. The inconsistency among the 2 graphs is perhaps not as odd as it seems. Opposition leaders tend to execute less than so on top main secretary questions. At the start of 2008, for example, David Mr. Cameron, lead of the opposition at the period, had superior adoption ratings rather than main secretary Gordon Tan. Down there seems to be a superior the hell you aware element at act, while human beings are requested to say that lead should be in accusation. Down there's been a riches of voting on Brexit, thing that seems specific to go on in the predictable next. One conclusion is how human beings include be more than downbeat above the year on the potential result of Brexit talks. They've as well be more than adverse in their evaluation of how the government is processing the negotiations. It should be marked, yet, how the newest figures are of October, up the December breakout in talks. He's rather probable how the will conduct to an growth in hopefulness and more than favourable assessments of by the government's productivity. Each path, down there's not very any precise testimony of any considerable change in voters' main type each in favor or versus Brexit. He's real how at the begin of the year law was usually a few points front because at the end of the year he's been incorrect lightly front. But any true changing is really little. The just secure finding of the testimony is how the nation remnant approximately alike break on the question. Some pollsters include generally had such figures. One survey published fair 1 week ago by BMG, with the factual plebiscite issue of 2016, did propose a greater change. How put stay on 51% and keep on 41%, in 7% indecisive and 1% preferring not to tell. The is fair a solitary survey, although, as BMG spot out themselves. And it was generally carried out while negotiations in Brussels seemed to be jammed above the question of the Irish boundary. It does not coup the more than consecutive image. He's enticing to tell, as someone one day put it, how on supporting for Brexit anything has modified.